This is a podcast from the Samplecast, Volume 3, Episode 73.
The Samplecast.
Hello, welcome to the show. I'm Ruben Cornell. I'm your host this week and every week of the Samplecast. This is number 73. Thank you so much for joining me. We had a bit of a skinny show last week with not much in it, but this week's show is absolutely packed. Before I get into it, I'll remind you about how to contact the show. Basically, just go on the Samplecast website at thesamplecast.com. You'll see all the links on there. We're on Instagram, Facebook. You can email us directly. We're also on Twitter. If you're listening on iTunes and you like the show, please review and rate us over there on the iTunes site. We've got a few reviews, but could always do with some more. And it really helps us gain visibility and helps get the show off the ground every week. So it'd be great if you could do that. In this week's show, there's going to be lots of updates. We've got bargains, freebies. There's a brilliant tip at the end of the show for thickening up and multiplying your multi-sampled contact libraries. And we've also got a review of AizerX, which is a package of 2 libraries from Keepforest. I'll be coming on to that later on in the show with lots of audio examples. Before I get into the meat and potatoes of the show, I'd like to put another call out for composers to be involved in our composer demo and interview section of the show. 2018 has been my mission to get female composers on, and I've had plenty of those and a couple of guys as well, but I'm always looking for more females to be featured in the show. I'm really trying to push that concept out there for 2018. I want to hear from female composers. If you're listening to the show, or if you know any female composers that would love to be interviewed for it, then do please get in touch. All I need is a bit of audio and a few demo tracks, and then we're away. So let me know if there's any composers that you know of the female persuasion, and I'll be very happy to get in touch with them. So let's kick off with this week's news.
Roundup.
First up, a fun drum library from Billy Jupp over at Insanity Samples. This is Offensive Drums. This one's in the full version of Contact, and it's almost a gigabyte in size with 3 distinct kits. The interface is simple with basic effects controls, and each drum has a relative velocity and panning control. I had this library for a play around, and the most interesting thing for me were the variety of scraping effects on offer and the iron factor control, which adds a metallic edge to the sound. This is great for cutting through a mix. As well as Offensive Drums, do check out their other instruments from Insanity Samples, including guitar and synth, over at Contact Hub. Back in Samplecast show 64, I looked at a new company making waves with their trailer sounds. That was TH Studio Production. And now they've released a sequel, which is Trailer Elements 2. They sent it to me for a quick go around, and I have to say it's just as good as the previous one, possibly even better. It's certainly bigger. You know the drill with this kind of library by now. You've got booms, crashes, and all sorts of big trailer noises, but this time there are also some vocals on board, which were very nice. As well as standalone WAVs, there are 53 instruments for the full version of Contact 5.6.6 and above. So do take a look at the website in the show notes, where you can also find 30% discount for the bundle of Trailer Elements 1 and 2. SampleHero continue their release of pocket money priced instruments with a set of small Oriental 1930s chimes. This is Japanese chime piano. It runs in the full version of Contact. It's a tiny library at just 30 megabytes, but it's pretty nice sounding. It's got an extended playable range over and above the octave of the original instrument, and there's onboard reverb, EQ controls, and it's just $5, so do check it out at the SampleHero site. Here are two new synths running in a new engine for Steinberg's Hallion. I'll admit I don't really use Hallion myself, and I haven't tried these synths, but the example tracks sound great, and there's a free demo with 40 patches, so you can try it out for yourself. Word of mouth on these instruments has been that they're pretty good, so definitely worth a look. There's two of them, they're called Poly and Wave. Like most synths, there are far too many elements to go into every single detail here, but Sample Fuel have produced some good videos to explain everything. Don't forget that Hallion SE is free to download, so you can try the demo at your convenience without spending a penny.
Bargain VST.
So on to this week's bargains, and we'll kick off with East West's Hollywood Orchestra Gold. I've not seen this bundle priced so low before, and it's an entire suite of Hollywood orchestral instruments running in the Play engine, and it's about 99 gigs in size. The instruments have won multiple awards over the years, and they're go-to tools for many AAA composers. Personally, I tend to use the strings quite regularly, but the brass and percussion in particular also get good write-ups. Currently, you can get 60% off Hollywood Orchestra Gold, which makes the collection €219, and that's really a massive bargain in my book. Do click the link in the show notes to go direct to the deal page with lots more information. If you're hankering after some new pianos, then this deal from Audio Plugin Deals is definitely worth a look. For $99, you get 4 different piano libraries from Production Voices. This is the Contact Keyboard Bundle. So that ranges from the esoteric death piano with a lot of different patches for kind of strange twisted tones over to a fully loaded and fully mic'd Yamaha C7 Grand. These all run in the full version of Contact, and originally the price for this collection was $396. Now you can pick it up for 75% off at just $99. Do head to the link in the show description for more details.
The Big Review.
On to this week's big review, and it's AizerX from Keepforest. And this is actually two different libraries, but they're pretty similar in functionality, so I'm putting them together in one review. This collection consists of a Trailer Effects Designer Toolkit and the Modern Designer Toolkit. As I say, two separate products. You can buy them separately, but they're very similar. These load in the full version of Contact 5.7.3 and above, and use the new large-style Contact interface. Let's take a listen. In the interface, there are 6 slots for combining various combinations of effect samples, and these slots all have adjustable panning, ADSR, cutoff, tuning, stereo width, LFO, reversing, and lots more controls as well. There's also an XY pad in the middle to mix between 4 of these different sounds, whilst the other 2 play back. At the bottom of the interface, there's a timeline which you can use to set the triggering of the various samples, along with options for global ADSR and other controls. So basically you can stack up to 6 samples on top of one another, playing them back in all sorts of different ways. There's also a post effects rack here with 15 different effects and multiple LFOs and sequencer events. So that's a lot of control, and I haven't even mentioned everything that you can do, like the smart randomization, the browser window, assigning the mod wheel to XY control, or recording and playing back your own XY movements with the mouse. There's a lot here. There's also a mixer window for assigning playable effects on the upper keys, and if that all gets a bit too much for you, there's an easy mode which dispenses with some of the individual module controls. First off, the pros of this library, and I have to say I had a great time with these once I got the hang of what was going on, and beware, it might take you a couple of hours to get to grips with it. There's so much good stuff here that I don't really know what to point out first. The randomization is very smart, rarely throwing up anything other than effortlessly usable combinations. The sound browser and presets are all very well thought out with a pretty good range of different sounds, although they mostly have a kind of hybrid electronic vibe to them. They sound very modern, but obviously that's quite useful in this day and age. The easy transposing with the bottom keys and the clever way that you can play versions of the sounds with pre-roll and without did impress me immensely. Although the interface is busy, it's great to be able to see all of the waveforms playing back at the same time, and that really helps to visualize what's going on with the sounds. These libraries reward time spent with them to get to know exactly how they work and to learn how to apply the various automation to make the sounds your own. I must give a special mention to the Kits patch, which is bundled with the Modern Trailer Toolkit, and this is a great selection of pre-mixed and performed one-shots and sequences for percussion and effects. And this is something I found which is actually missing in my personal arsenal, so I think I'll get a lot of use out of that. Now on to the cons, and the thing I'll point out first is that I think these instruments are somewhat over-designed, partly in how they operate, but also in the design of the interface themselves. Just look at the FX rack as an example. There's so many superfluous graphics here that at first glance, it's quite difficult to tell what's a dial or button and what isn't, especially as some of them are the same colour as the background. There's also quite a lot of wasted space in the FX rack, especially as you have to scroll up and down to see all of the different FX slots, despite there being loads of room either side and below the rack itself. It's not the very worst interface I've ever seen, take about Ghosts of Autumn, but some rudimentary changes could have clarified things immensely. There have been some grumbles online about the size of the controls on the main page, and there are a lot of controls there for the various interface sections. However, with other products that I've reviewed, I've often mentioned that I don't like scrolling through interface pages to get at what I need. And with AizerX, you can see every dial and button up front. Granted, they're tiny, but I can't have it both ways, so Keepforest gets a pass on this occasion. So in conclusion, and this is a long conclusion, these two libraries offer the modern trailer and sound designer cutting-edge sounds with a very flexible, if rather busy, interface. Competitors like the Sculptor range from Gothic Instruments do a similar thing, but not in such a complex way. So I have three main concerns with these instruments. Firstly, that the learning curve is steep. I haven't seen the completed manual as it wasn't ready at the time of this review, but I do hope it will be comprehensive enough to cover everything in a logical way. The second concern is the price for the raw amount of content on offer. Full price for each module is $300 to $400, and you could buy an awful lot of individual effects samples for that price, although you won't have nearly the amount of flexibility with the AizerX engine. My last concern is actually the sounds themselves and the longevity of this library. These sounds really are bleeding edge effects sounds, so they're really up to date. They've got a sharp resonant tone, which is perfect for trailer scoring right now, but this might slip out of fashion in a couple of years. If it sounds like I'm down on these libraries, I'm really not, and I really enjoyed using them, but I have to be fully aware that as a tool for crazy and fun experimentation, which has been sent to me for free, I had a blast. But obviously people are going to have to buy these libraries and it'll be a major cash and time investment for somebody else. So I do want that person to get their money's worth. There's more information about AizerX at the Keepforest website.
Unknown gem.
So I've got a nice unknown gem for you this week. It was certainly unknown to me until very recently. Now, I'm not a live musician, well, I haven't been for many years since college, but if I was still performing live, then I'd definitely be interested in this. This is ALK2, and it's a DAW-like package that allows you to perform live with loops, but gives the song more structure. So I wanted to include this as I hadn't seen anything quite like it on the market. Basically, program a session in ALK2 before you perform it, and then you can structure the song to play in loops at specific points. It's even compatible with effects plugins and live triggering. So as you play back, you kind of fill in the blanks with your live playing of either audio or MIDI, and if you make a mistake, you can always hit the panic button and it replaces that particular loop with a pre-recorded one. There's a lot more to it than just playback and repeating, as you can include automation, quantization, and effects as well. To me, I found it really interesting. It's definitely worth a look. Unfortunately, it only runs on Macs right now, but I'd be keen to see a PC version and definitely a version for iPad. If you're into live playing and need something more flexible than the standard loop pedal, then do check it out at the Zen Audio website.
This week at Zen Audio, we're happy to announce the release of ALK2, our arranged live looper. Now this begs the obvious question, what is arranged live looping? Arranged live looping is an innovative new concept, combining the sound layering abilities of traditional loop pedals with the power of a software sequencer. What ALK does differently to a traditional loop pedal is allow the user to pre-program the points of record and playback in the arrangement in a familiar DAW-like environment. Like every other DAW, ALK works on a system of tracks and regions. Unlike every other DAW, where the regions contain pre-recorded audio and MIDI, ALK's regions are the pre-programmed record and playback points of an audio and MIDI live looping arrangement. We call these regions record loops and playback loops. These loops can be easily drawn into the arrangement as a song structure and then performed without requiring any live triggering of the record and playback functions. Traditional loop pedals are great, but in order for them to be easy to use, many of their functions have to be limited, such as the loop length. Once you put down that 4-bar guitar loop, you then need to put down 4 bars of keys, 4 bars of shaker, 4 bars of oohs and ahs, meaning your song will take several minutes to get started. Zen Audio ALK integrates the longer loops that are essential for songwriting seamlessly with the shorter loops, which are often used just for decoration. ALK's simple but powerful interface allows for varying loop lengths, offsets, pitch shifting, and even stutter-based effects, all using the familiar region-based architecture. ALK handles mistake situations much more gracefully than other loopers, which generally only give the option to undo and then redo the parts. Trigger the panic mode, and ALK instantly inserts a pristine pre-recorded clip into the currently recording loop, allowing the song to continue without fault. Audio and MIDI looping arrangements can be created quickly and easily using the pencil tools, and with full VST and audio unit plugin support, the sound you create can be truly your own.
Free VST.
Let's get on to this week's freebies, and it's that time of the year again when Computer Music magazine gives away over 70 plugins and samplers for free with its July 2018 issue. I used to write for Computer Music back in the day, and for the £7 cover price you do get so much content, so it's definitely recommended. The new freebie on the block here is Thorn CM Synth, but there's a whole load of legacy content too, and the pages and pages inside the magazine do show how to use all the different plugins. So check it out, should be on newsstands right now. I'll also mention another freebie, this one from Supreme Samples. It's a pitch down djembe with multiple velocity layers and 5 different instrument variations. It kind of sounds like a taiko drum ensemble, so they've called it Djemko Epic Drum Ensemble, albeit it's a kind of hybrid designed version rather than the real thing. Nevertheless, it's definitely worth a download to add to your epic tracks.
Developer update.
So on to this week's updates, and there's a couple of big ones. Session Strings Pro 2 to kick off with. This is Native Instruments string library that they've updated and expanded. It used to be called Session Strings and then Session Strings 2, but now it's Session Strings Pro 2. It runs in Contact Player, and they've remixed the samples here, they've redesigned the interface, they've given you more controls and lots of other features as well. You can use the smart chord and voicing options to create authentic string chords, and now there's an onboard phrase and rhythmic animator as well, so you can kind of plug and play rhythmic motifs. This Pro version has individual instrument sections and more articulations too, along with smaller and larger string sections. It's 38 gigs compared to the non-Pro version, which is 8 gigs, so there's a lot more content here. I've always found that the kind of dry sound of session strings really divides people, and it's definitely more geared up for pop and jazz productions rather than orchestral scoring, but there are demos and walkthrough videos on the Native Instruments site, so you can decide for yourself. AizerX hard rock from Toontrack now. This is the latest update to Toontrack's arsenal of kits, this time focused on metal and rock, engineered by the legendary Bob Rock, the man behind Metallica, Motley Crue and Aerosmith, so definitely an appropriate name. There are two different kits here, Gretsch and Ludwig, with custom mix presets, a selection of MIDI grooves, and this expansion will run in EZdrummer 2 and Superior Drummer 3, but be aware that the content here is basically a slimmed down version of the Rock Foundry, which came out a few months ago for Superior Drummer 3. However, if you've only got EZdrummer 2, then this is a good place to get your rock drums fix. Do check it out at the Time and Space website or over at Toontrack.
Tips and tricks.
In this week's tip section, I'm going to show you how to quickly and easily use a couple of versions of the same instrument in Contact to thicken the sound. So I want to show you this technique using a really super simple instrument because that shows it off the best. And I've chosen something out of the Contact factory selection. It's the rock guitar patch. Now what we're going to do is actually load two versions of this instrument, two of exactly the same one. And this technique really works best with something that is multi-sampled. So if you go into the editing and the mapping editor, you will see the multi-samples spread out across the keyboard. And that's the key to this technique because we're going to borrow samples from further down or further up the keyboard and transpose them. Now I've seen this technique being used by a few different people, but I do it within Contact and you don't need multiple tracks in your DAW, so that makes it quite easy to do. So you've got two instances of the track and we're going to pitch one of them down, 6 semitones in this case, but you can do really any value that you like. Then go into the options for that instrument, you can see here, and then transpose up 6 semitones. so it results in the same pitch of note. So that automatically thickens up the sound. You can hear it on its own here. And then with both the instruments engaged, because there's two different samples from two different parts of the mapping being played simultaneously. And what I like to do is actually set one to left and one to hard right, and then you get a nice wide sound. That as opposed to this. And you can use that technique with any instrument as long as it's multi-sample, just checking the mapping to see that it is. Thanks so much for listening to the show, it's really appreciated. You can get in touch with us in many ways. Email at thesamplecast@gmail.com. We're at The Samplecast on Twitter. We're also on Facebook, just search for The Samplecast. Instagram is the same as well, The Samplecast. And what else is there? There must be other ways to get hold of me. Oh, you can just message us via the website. That's something you can do if you fancy it. Thanks again for listening to the show. We'll be back again next week. As I said at the top of the show, if you know any female composers who'd like to be involved with the show and be interviewed about their work, please do get in touch with me, and I will be back again next week. Bye bye now.